Ironside will not be seen tonight, so we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Kingdom Come is 4 separate issues, 48 pages apiece. It was an all-immersive kind of lifestyle for me.
It blew people away. I mean, this was the most sought-after book there was.
This was something very new, very different.
No one had seen anything like that at that scale before.
It was amazing.
I never thought from anything that people would still be talking about this book 25 years later.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Become a patron today. Patreon.com/wordballoon. For as little as $3 a month, you can really help Word Balloon keep going and get exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. Here's what you get. The Word Balloon Magazine, a digital publication packed with behind-the-scenes interviews, commentary, and insights from your favorite comic book creators, writers, and pop culture stars. And you can join the Word Balloon Book Club. Join Brian Bendis and me for a live monthly discussion of a hand-picked graphic novel. It's a great way to dig deeper into storytelling, art, and comic book history. Word Balloon has been a home for creator conversations since 2005. Your support helps cover production costs and keeps these interviews going strong. So if you love comics, creators, and long-form conversations, become a patron today. Be one of the League of Word Balloon listeners. Patreon.com/wordballoon. Alex Ross, welcome back to Word Balloon. Fantastic to see you, and always good. And you look great, and I love the room you're in right now, and the iconography that is behind you. I see a
Yeah, you can see my Shakespeare bust behind me there. So
yes,
and next to a Hulk bust. So
I don't know if
thank you for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Alex. And I don't know if you flipped ahead. Is there a secret panel that reveals any bat poles or anything?
That's in the basement, so I don't have a direct elevator to the basement, unfortunately. I'm not that special.
Well, Alex, it was so great seeing you a couple weeks ago for the opening of your fantastic Heroes and Villains exhibit at the Dunn Museum here in suburban Chicago, Libertyville, Illinois. And so worth going to, everybody, because I've had the pleasure of not only seeing Alex's stuff there, but when it's exhibited in New York and in San Diego, really beautiful to see the framed final versions of these iconic images that you create. So well done.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. For me, kind of the biggest payoff that would be special to me, since I obviously have had access to my artwork this whole time, that's not going to be new to me, but I never got to see what it was initially intended for, which was a life-size mural put into the Marvel offices in New York City. So when that was installed 5 years ago, COVID struck, and then nobody saw it for a year or so. But I've never been there since it was put up, and so they made one of those blow-ups here in the show so that people can see the context of what the work was meant for. So they've got one side of the mural, of course, as you know, that's the heroes, and then the other side of it is the villains. And it's great for the picture taking, but it also is sort of like that interactive experience that is really fun to get up next to something and see that the impression these things are meant to make is at that scale. So in a way, my paintings were a form of function, they weren't designed to be just seen as works of art, because they're not life size. They're only, just under 3 feet high. So they're larger than normal comic art, but they're not the majestic thing of when you blow it up on the side of a wall, and also piecing all the figures together, which they're all separate paintings of figures that are combined. And it's just great fun to see them unified.
Yeah, I think really the combination turns out great, and they're in front of a white background. And also, I know that at alexrossart.com, you're selling the individual images, or some of the A-listers. Oh, you didn't even know from based on your expression. But what I loved about the exhibit is, again, and I know this about you, Alex, and this is why I love talking to you. You and I are around the same age, so you're damn right you're going to put Black Goliath in, and some of the lesser Marvel heroes that still are so significant. Why that choice?
Oh, because once I got past the initial run of figures for both heroes and villains, they were requesting me to keep going, come back around. Could you do more? And like, okay, I'm going to go into the deep cuts, the B characters, where this will be the ones that some clearly you could say should have been in the first lineup. Classics like, Wasp and Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket. But when you get into those characters, Luke Cage's and Iron Fist, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, to me, they've got to be the classics. And that's what the line is all about. It's about preserving. This is what the iconography is. And whatever they've been updated to is very often something that's been a change that's happened within recent history. Now, recent history to you and I could be the last 30 years, but for a lot of people today, they're like, God, why are you still drawing that old Ms. Marvel costume on Carol Danvers? It's like, to me, that's the icon. And I'll die fighting for that, but the thing is, you also have to give up for the fact that, like, look, if I'm the one drawing these things, like picking Black Goliath, I just love that design.
Oh, yeah.
I love that design more than when the character switched over to the name Giant Man and had a white and blue costume. And, it wasn't anywhere near as weird and as interesting as the exposed midriff and high collar suit that he had. For some reason, that's just iconographic candy to me.
You don't have to convince me, Alex. I'm like that about a lot of 70s designs. And even before I get to DC, even some of those other earlier Marvel Silver Age design, I always loved the white and green original Kree armor, Marvel, Captain Marvel costume. And I would love to see more flashback stories of him in that. And also in this age of toyetic, everyone is thinking about, well, we got to make the toy, got to make the toy. And I don't know how many people are clamoring for Marvel Kree toys and things. But I mean,
they have made it. It does exist.
There you go, man. Absolutely. And that's the thing. There is that market for that stuff. So yeah, I am absolutely with you. Now, you did a similar, a part of the Dunn Museum exhibit as well is a DC wing, and it was great to see that. And not only, again, the modern characters, but I'm so glad you included the Golden Age characters that you did as well. Was that as well for a mural for DC, or just to keep things formatically in sync of what you did with Marvel?
The only option I had back then that I could convince them to do was a series of posters. And those posters were handled much like the variant covers that Marvel's doing with me now, where I don't even know why they accepted this from me, because I'm painting whole figures, but we're delivering the covers as cropped, bust-up shots. And that's what the posters were like back in the 2000s. So there was a whole fleet of those posters made, and I would have kept going, but they saw diminishing returns, I'm assuming, because they decided, like, okay, after this point, nobody cares anymore. And I wasn't getting a lot of support. So the greater idea about having something like a mural was nothing that was ever encountered, or, the first thing of it was a life-size Superman that was made for a cardboard standee in '98. And I would have thought for his 60th anniversary, you'd just jump from that straight into Batman in his 60th. And so I painted Batman the following year, and they did not do anything other than make posters from that. So there was no cardboard life-size version of him. I think there might have been blow-ups that were done for either a booth graphic or maybe even their offices at some point. But as far as the line of figures, other than making a print that had a sort of lineup of them as, as if they're all the Justice League standing together, or also there's the book collection of the world's greatest superheroes. That's my graphic novels with Paul Dini. That we have it wrapping around the bookcase. But otherwise, there's no big image you could have seen anywhere with all those figures together. So maybe that's something in the future we could do. I mean, since I have a booth in San Diego, we could be pulling that kind of thing together. And as far as me adding more to it, that's me having to look into it in the time to come here, where once I get out of the creative hole of making new graphic novels, then I can get back to that maybe and, see how far I want to go with it.
You have a great ongoing relationship with both Marvel and DC currently, and it's
I
funny.
wouldn't call it great.
Well, let's call it a working relationship. And then you seem to be able to. I'm glad you're still able to come to terms. And by the way, Alex, I loved your Project Superheroes Dynamite stuff because I think those. And let's take a quick detour before I get to my question. Mm-hmm. That was great, and truly, and obviously you feel the same way. Those original designs of a lot of those Golden Age characters are so interesting, and it was great to see you put your spin on them and freshen them up for the Dynamite line and everything. Tell me, because again, kind of harkening back to the Golden Age DC stuff that you did as well. Because I know, again, you and I grew up with Silver Age and Bronze Age, depictions of characters and things. But yeah, I mean, is there still an appeal for those Golden Age designs of characters that we haven't seen you do? Would you ever do Airboy or anybody like that?
We specifically avoided a lot of the ones that you would expect would have been contested for ownership. So stuff like Airboy, which was published by, was that Eclipse or Comico?
It was Eclipse in the 80s, absolutely.
I think there might have been a concern with some of that stuff that somebody out there could say, hey, I have a current trademark on that. And even if those characters had fallen into public domain, somebody could still keep up the trademark. They could refile for that and have ownership of the name and everything. And that was true for a few of the characters we were even working with. It just turned out that like stuff that had been done by Bill Black and his company, Americomics, they did certain characters like Ms. Mask, they owned the name of, but much of the other stuff they played with, like the Golden Age Daredevil, well, they couldn't trademark that name. So as long as we weren't calling the book Daredevil, we could use them. And, much of the graphic imagery of what they were classic wise was something you can get at, but we did avoid certain things like, realistically, all those Fawcett characters that aren't the Marvel family, they're in the public domain. I'm not going to go and say, let's just grab Golden Arrow and Bullet Man and throw them in. Like, no, let's not do any kind of tangle that'll get us into a fuss with DC. Sure. And there's even oddly a few characters that were cribbed into the Marvel universe that Roy pulled in 30 some years ago. But for the most part, we were grabbing things that there wasn't any current claim to. And these were the ones I really wanted. Stuff like Black Terror and the Golden Age Daredevil. Those were the prime ones I wanted to get my hands on. I just feel like the original Golden Age Daredevil costume, you could link to so many other things that he's the forerunner of. Just the look of Spider-Man seems like it's somehow linkable to him. You ever wonder, was there a Golden Age Spider-Man? Well, there's lots of things with the spider prefix, but not, aesthetically, it's more like this character of Daredevil.
That's interesting. I hear you. Well, that leads me to my question. And I've been talking to guys because we all know within a decade, the original iterations of Superman and Batman will be in public domain. And then the year after that is the Joker. The year after that is Wonder Woman. Would you ever want to do, and again, what you kind of answered, but I am curious regarding the specifics of that Action Comics #1 and Detective Comics #27. would you ever want to draw, or have you drawn a Schuster-like first image of Superman or Batman? And further, would you want to ever tell stories once they hit the public domain? We're seeing it with Popeye, we're seeing it with Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse. So would that at all interest you from an art or story standpoint?
Yes, but mostly because there's a kind of creative thing that's already come to mind for me regarding Superman, that I could see Superman telling a story, literally himself telling a story about himself as coming from the Schuster Superman. Because you have to remember, it's not the current version of Superman you see that is going to be in the public domain. It's not the one even from when he kind of got his refinement. It would be the 38 version of him only. So people have to be mindful of that. You can't just go and grab everything that's come since. So as well as the name Superman is still going to be a preserved trademark. So yes. Don't think you can call a story, comic book, whatever, Superman. But realistically, if I had some grand ambition for Superman, even of the Golden Age version, I've known that if I put my back into it, meaning that I would be both drawing and producing the thing, DC would support it, just short of if I was basically insulting the publisher and, creators. I mean, they wouldn't endorse that, but just about any creative endeavor I could have gotten made in the last 30 years. So I'd have to have something that's really worth kind of stepping outside of the company to tell, should it be necessary, so it's going to be all porn, of course.
That's fine. Hey, the kryptonite condom. Was it Larry Niven that did that Man of Steel, Woman of Tissue essay decades ago, explaining why Superman and Lois couldn't have sex, and that he'd, probably drive a hole through.
Did he write that?
I thought it was Larry Niven, but I'm probably wrong.
Alex,
I'm probably wrong.
I was referencing that exact thing to a friend yesterday, and he had no idea what I was talking about. So I said, yeah, they wrote that whole thing in the Superman 2 movie of removing his powers so they could get with Lois because of the effect of that text piece. He's like, what are you talking about? And you could also say, none of us comic fans would have known of that text piece. So the idea that the adult world is sitting there going, he'd break that poor woman, and they'd be overthinking the science of it, which you think, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't be overthinking that stuff, but that's what gave them a prompt for a story twist and whatever. And of course, we accept it as, an otherwise successful movie, but you realize the movie's dragged down by this one factoid of thinking that somehow, with all the self-control or pliability of powers, that he couldn't control this one thing. It's and of course you see in the contemporary versions of the characters, they've just skipped past it and say, nobody cares about this. Nobody's worried about Henry Cavill breaking his Lois Lane, or, the current one. It's no, they're not. This is not a thing. It's all so much fantasy that if you have this amount of control that the person's doing anything on the earth without destroying everything he touches, his control would extend to this, or that the specific biology of these things is so flexible to whatever you want to make it be, because it's BS science.
Of course, absolutely. I love this alley that we've suddenly found ourselves in. We'll get out.
Of course, actually, can you just go ahead and explain to people what the context of the piece is? Because I'm.
Well, forgive me, because again, I just remember, and as I said, the title was Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex, and the concern, and I mean, I'm sure it was made as a humor essay, that essentially, they couldn't have sex because, again, he would be too powerful, and even the release of his manhood would, I'll keep it clinical, would truly physically, if not destroy Lois, certainly damage her irrevocably. And then, so that's what I remember. We're in the gist of it and everything.
Okay. I think, I mean, now everybody's
Let's
going
turn it
too much
into a
information.
Letter. I never knew these things were true until the following happened to Superman. So I'm doing a Penthouse Forum letter, if you remember those from our youth. But anyway, getting out of the gutter. Let's talk about the movie, because the new movie, we've both seen it. Seems like we both enjoyed it. I'm assuming how'd you feel about the movie, Alex?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I do have an interesting story in regards to my own experience because it is really telling of who I am and what kind of brain I have. That I was actually going into the movie expecting fully of a surprise I thought I had figured out was going to be in the film, a surprise character reveal or a couple character reveals that would prove not to be in the film. So I had to deal with literally going through, I would say, about 80% of the movie thinking for sure I'm going to be proven right. This stuff is going to turn out. And then you get to the end and go, oh, I was wrong. Character never showed up. So the journey of this story is simply a friend of mine had mentioned he was looking at IMDb a couple months ago and he saw a listing of a character, an actor's name for this film. Then when he's reading it to me, he's like, do you know who this guy's going to be playing? And he said the actor name, Ed Skrein. And if you know Ed Skrein, he's the villain in the first Deadpool movie, as well as he's in the movie Alita Battle Angel. He's in the film Midway, and I'm forgetting many others. Oh, he's also the villain in the Rebel Moon 2 film project on Netflix. Anyway, so great actor. And I hear this and I go, oh, I know what Gunn is doing. He's not letting any of us see the footage that would give away that Brainiac's going to show up in the movie, and it's going to be Ed Skrein in green makeup and terrific add-on, biomechanical extracts and all kinds of stuff. The electrodes coming out of his head. It'll be horrified. It'll be modern kind of, Gunn will go crazy with this. And this is the part we haven't seen. And they'll go on to justify why in the world Gunn would choose to make yet another Superman movie, the third in the last 20 years, with Superman's villain being Lex Luthor. Why would he do that? He wouldn't, because he intended to do Brainiac with him. And of course, putting the two together is a great pairing. Well, that's what I went in thinking was going to happen. Any game fans who followed, it's a few years old now, the second Injustice game, from, is it Nether Realm is the game company? Well, they're Chicagoans. How do you not know them?
Shame on me. Honestly, Alex, I am game ignorant.
I
tried to play Arkham City, and I always have Batman like walking in a circle. I can't. The modern joystick. You'll forgive the phrase, but honestly, there needs to be extension classes at colleges to teach us people like me and that need to learn how to use these things, because truly I stopped in 98 when it went from playing a game on your regular computer and the things got more sophisticated. But please tell me about
actually, I mean, you don't need to learn a damn thing, because I have never played a game since 1983, I think. Ultimately my thing is that these cinematics that they make, or what they call the cutscenes, are effectively full stories that you can watch the whole of for free in 4K on your home television.
True.
On YouTube, and they're up there for all these various movies, the Mortal Kombat ones, Street Fighter, whatever you name, Last of Us, I'm sure that's up there. And these are like 3-hour high-end CG movies that you would think, why isn't this in a theater? Why is it free? Well, because the gameplay is the point for selling that product to the consumer. But there's this side effect of, I don't have to play any games. I can just watch those interweaving stories. And so my friends who I went to art school with, who wound up at Midway, and then eventually that became NetherRealm, owned by Warner Brothers, they've been doing those Mortal Kombat games for over 30 years, as well as now the DC stuff. And they did, in their second Injustice game, the villain Brainiac was the main featured thing. And it's high end. Like, you're watching full CG graphic effects that you would think, why isn't this in a movie? Somebody's going to eventually make a movie version of this. And that's actually what I thought was happening in the Gunn thing. I thought we were going to get to that. So any of the clips we saw that involved the destruction of Metropolis looking like it was getting ripped apart, I thought was going to be Brainiac's shrinking Metropolis to take it. And that's what Superman will really have to, kick it up a notch to save the day for. Well, obviously that's not what's in this movie. And the other thing I guessed at, which everybody could have guessed at, is, well, the spoiler alert for anybody watching this, that basically the guy called Ultraman is just going to be a clone of Superman. And therefore, that would lead to the conclusion of it's not Ultraman. That's just to throw you off. The name, the costume, it's Bizarro. Well, we know from the movie we saw that he doesn't look anything other than like Superman.
Right.
And so where he winds up at the end of the movie, you figure, when we come back around to this, we'll be able to pick up, and then he'll be transformed and he'll be the Bizarro version. But because they didn't commit to that in this one film, you still have people thinking, oh, he's going to have Earth 3 and all this other stuff with the crime syndicate. Like, no, it's not Ultraman. It never was. But, so ultimately, those are two things I expected to see fully in this movie. I got half of one. It's weirdly enough, Paul Dini thought that it was going to turn out that underneath that costume, that was actually a controlled Supergirl. And he bet me, or what did he say? He bet me $1 that, which one of us would be right. And he said, like, well, I owe you 50 cents because I was half right. It was a clone of Superman, but it wasn't Bizarro yet. So he might have to pay me 50 cents in the future again to equal out this bet. But yeah, I could say that getting through the whole thing, you enjoy it so much because whatever the shortcomings are, which there are always going to be shortcomings, there always has been shortcomings in every single Superman movie going back. I as an 8-year-old kid seeing Chris Reeve, I thought his whole purpose in life is to save California from going in the ocean. There's bigger fish to fry. Anyways, for everybody in California going like, Alex Ross hates us. I tease. Anyways, I think that it's such a charming and bright movie, which that I loved. Every effect shot that they had of him flying, fighting up in the sky looks like he's in sunlight. And that I love. That I truly appreciate. I love the performances. I love most of the stuff he gives people to do, meaning that it's more substantive of conversation, of giving them something to do in the plot. And I mean what James Gunn wrote for them. And, it'll be often said that the breakout character in the movie is Mr. Terrific. And God bless, that's fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, he's going to inspire a lot of people, and we will likely be seeing much more of him in the future because of how fun that was. And that doesn't mean that it undercut, say, Guy Gardner, because all the stuff with Guy Gardner landed right where it was supposed to. It was the right tone to pick, and it worked. It absolutely worked. The costumes, I don't love Guy's costume. I think they should have just committed all the way to him wearing what they designed back in '85. Just go for it. It's a terrible costume, but like, don't replace it with a different terrible costume. Just make what they made. And sure. We got to get away from rubber on Superman. Come on, something different, something one day. Just here's what my plan is. Take the actor who's put a lot of work into bulking up for this, put some pasties over his nipples, shave him, and then paint his freaking body.
Like Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen. Go ahead.
Well, that was CG, but
CGI.
I mean, and that was definitely not the actor's body for sure. But I mean, you know what? You compare it more to Dr. Manhattan in the Watchmen TV series for HBO.
Yes.
That was more what I expected we should get in the movies, not a complete CG makeover of a fake body, but a real actor is walking around naked. And I thought that worked out very well in that film or show. Much more successfully because it didn't have you distracted with all the unreality of the body, anyways, yeah, I'm sick of the whole hand wringing over, like, what way do we transform the flat fabric, which is only trying to show off really the pure muscular human form. So it's not about nudity. It's about definition and impressiveness of physique. And we keep trying to substitute rubber for that. We go into heavier rubber, which is what this movie is. And you wonder, like, so fabric's that bad, huh? We just all hate fabric, and I just think that I don't know. There's got to be a revolution in it, and I don't see the revolution coming from either of the big companies because I don't think they show the boldness that should be executed at this point. They keep repeating its design aesthetics. They're convinced that we need superfluous little fine detail in every little pore, and we don't. But that's a very small critique because at the end of the day, do I not like these movies because of that? No, I love them just fine.
I hear you.
It's a personal critique that I know that loads of fans and cosplayers who prototype this stuff have opinions, and we're waiting for somebody to do something a little simpler. And I'll make one additional argument about what's weird in the modern age of where we elevate appreciation of great design for films and genre characters. Star Wars and all the various costumes we see within that world, from the red suited Imperial Guard that guarded the Emperor to pure white, clean white on the stormtroopers' outfits with no sublimated detail. Star Wars will embrace pure fabrics. I mean, there's no sublimated texture in Darth Vader's black cloak. It's just black. They don't worry about that because they've got all this other stuff to distract our eyes. And they reserve bright color for only select things that they utilize, but they're not as desperate to think, well, the audience isn't going to accept this if it doesn't have a repeated pattern in infinity on top of the surface of this thing. And you wish you could get the audience with Hollywood to say, would you stop doing this? Nobody likes this. And for my 5 minutes of talking to Kevin Feige a year ago, that was not part of the conversation. So, and I don't know that I would have any impact on him anyway. So let's hope your video can go around the world and it's a groundswell of, pushback of who knows.
Have you had the chance to meet James Gunn?
No. I know there was no reach out from Gunn's camp, although somebody could tell me like, oh, he retweeted whatever stuff from your social media. And as I can say in every single interview I'm part of, I'm not there. It's not me. It's not my it's technically my social media. I've never seen it. I've never written an email or a tweet. And the more I talk about it, I realize how superior I start to sound. So I got to stop.
No, Alex, I understand. And again, I owe social media a great debt of gratitude in terms of awareness of my podcast and what I'm doing.
Sure. Yeah.
By the same token, it's a weapon, and a lot of people use it for bad things. And I can say honestly that your social media that represents your brand has never done anything controversial. All it's done is exposed your art to a wider audience, and I hope it is engendered a bigger audience of not only fans but also buying fans and everything, and the people that really appreciate what you do. So again, you I would say honestly, Alex Ross Hart uses it for good, and I certainly try to do it as well. Back to the movie. God, it is so good to see the Kents as decent people. I mean, I didn't mind the casting of Kevin Costner and Diane Lane, but that
I did.
Well, I want to hear your opinion because honestly, the paranoia that they seem to give to Clark of, well, we can't trust people. And it's like, no, that's the man part of Superman. The lessons he learns from the Kents, that we're Kents, Clark. We help people. That's what we do. And even though it wasn't quite there overtly, I just felt a warmth and a true-blooded kind of Americana from these Kents. But please tell me about your feelings.
Actually, I mean, when you bring up the Kents, it makes me think, of course, of the thing left over of everybody going, so you're just going to leave that stand that Jor-El and the Kryptonians are basically, sent you here with this? Like, there's a lot of unhappy people over that. But I was one of those people watching the film thinking, well, they're going to fix that later and reveal that's not the full message. And of course, we didn't get that in this film. He'll probably be forced to do that in the future to say, well, there's more to it. And this is where, again, it ties into my Brainiac thing, which is the whole time I'm thinking, well, once they decode the rest of the full message, you're going to find out it's a warning that it's basically the whole thing of like, they know Brainiac because Brainiac was something they created, just
Sure.
like the animated series where, the Dini idea of you get Brainiac as a computer that misled the entire planet with the danger it was under,
Yes.
and now was traveling the universe collecting various kingdoms and whatnot and shrinking them. So it was a warning for that. And I thought that's what we were going to get. And so I didn't really sweat it, except that the Bradley Cooper cameo was completely distracting, of course, right out of the gate.
Because of casting? Because it's him?
Yeah, it just is sort of like, it's just Bradley Cooper. It's not Jor-El. It's only Bradley Cooper, I mean, if they fixed his face even further with more fillers, maybe we would have thought he was a different character. But, it's Bradley Cooper post hangover, Anyways, no, my objection to the casting from Snyder of his Kents wasn't Costner, it was Diane Lane, because damn it, if you take a woman I'd had this crush on since childhood practically, who's not that much older than me, and you decide to upgrade her age to make her the mother of Superman, like what? Diane Lane? No. From Streets of Fire? No, come on. And plus, 30 years ago, when I was doing Marvels, my depiction of Gwen Stacy was based on her because I thought she looked the most like the John Romita art style, and I was trying to adapt her features into that. So you can look at the art I did and find, I mean, hell, I could post my photos and show you. I was drawing from this picture of her. And so Diane Lane was Gwen Stacy to me because she was such a, elevated ideal. And I'm not happy with making her Ma Kent. That's not cool.
Well, more the characterization for me of that paranoia, and also Jonathan.
She should date Superman, not be his mother, is what I would.
Well, I have again, man. I'm with you on Streets of Fire and our love of Diane Lane, but really, it was Jonathan. Well, also, as we said earlier, there's no joy in Man of Steel,
right.
and
not one bit.
No, and as you said about the sunlight scenes in this movie and everything, but Jonathan being wiped out by the tornado, I don't care if he just said "You're not my father." In that, and Jonathan with the hand up and no, bullshit. I'll say it, bullshit. He's gonna save his father. He's got the powers. He's fast. He could do it without anyone realizing exactly what, not understanding what happened. And I'm like, what a cop out. What a cop out. And I was scared of this Jonathan because I love that character actor. I think he's great. But I'm like, wow, that's a weird looking Jonathan. I mean, God bless the guy. I know it's his own physical limitations. I know he's got wandering eyes, kind of like Frank Langella. But God, the heart that was in there in both of them, and really beautiful stuff. And really, I'm like, that's the Kents. That's the lesson of we will teach you good values, even in this messed up world. Because somebody that I disagreed with is like, well, it's a much more messed up world than it was during the 50s when we had Superboy and all. I'm like, every decade is messed up. I don't know how to break it to you. Every decade has had its issues. So, but no, these were good Kents. Jor-El in the message, I'm so glad you brought it up because I was going to bring it up immediately. And sadly, in this world that we currently live in, I'm like, yeah, fake news. But also it reminded me, I don't know how much you watch Smallville, but that great Christopher Reeve episode when they decipher the message, and it kind of said the same thing of, you will, live above them. You will lead them, and kind of implement. It suggested that maybe he would conquer them and lead the world. And Clark is all freaked out and talking to the Jonathan of Small and going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to. And he's like, hey, you're my son. That's not going to happen. And it was like, yes, that's great. And again, but I agree with you. I think it's obviously a manipulated message of fake news. It's fake news. Clearly, it's fake news. The Democrats want you to believe that Jor-El doesn't want this to happen. No, I think, and I wonder if in the Supergirl movie they might do that, because that's my other concern. How many years are we going to be, given the schedule and the pacing of how long it takes to make a movie? Are we going to have to wait 5 years for Superman 2? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I assume that they, like, say, when we look at the situation with Matt Reeves' Batman sequel, that there's extraordinary delays and circumstances why they weren't getting that screenplay together before. And for whatever those particulars are. I'm assuming the fire's under Gunn, and even if Gunn somehow was debilitated for a reason, his job is to get other people in action. So if he's not able to do the job, all these other features that are planned need to be put in action now. And assuming that the money they made, like they earned back their budget this weekend, right?
Well, at least a great opening. I hear they need to make at least 500 to 700 million to make a profit. But I have a good
Okay.
feeling that they're going to reach those goals myself.
Yeah, and we know it. All this stuff is very much based on word of mouth. That they don't get to those
Yes.
numbers without word of mouth. So the positivity needs to continue for this. And I mean, I'm not the kind of person that pays to go see films a second time in theater like I was when I was a kid. But you know, I do look forward to watching it at home when it's released in a couple of months on video. And I'm going to enjoy revisiting this subject because it was a fun place to be for the period of time it was. And
Yeah.
even whatever things are different than what I would do with the character or aesthetics are so infantile in the way that, like, yeah, but am I enjoying myself? And you help. Hell yeah. So I wish them the best for building what he's going to have to build right now. And I want to see them off and running.
I hear you, man. I also I talked to Jeff Loeb on Sunday and I talked to Jurgens Monday. It's a full week this week on Word Balloon, and I was talking to Jeff regarding his current Hush 2 that he's doing, and he was telling me that DC wants these stories to be in continuity, and right now the current status quo is if it happened in the past, it has to be acknowledged or not, in any way conflicted. Like he wanted Alfred in Hush 2, and they're like, oh, Alfred's dead right now. And he's like, all right, well, I'll write around it. That's fine. And he's not in Wayne Manor and not in that Batcave anymore. All right, I'll write around it. And I think he's succeeded so far in the 4 issues that I've read. But I wonder, too, like, I'm really glad for Fantastic Four full circle. It is such a sequel to This Man, This Monster, the iconic Fantastic Four Silver Age episode. Do you? I realize that was published by Abrams, but obviously with Marvel's, green light and everything and agreement. I do. Does current continuity hinder any kind of stories that you want to do? Is that a concern at all for you?
It is a concern because I was very careful in my current project I'm making for them. It's not a sequel to my last graphic novel, but it's my next thing. And I wanted to make sure that even though I'm being published outside of Marvel comic books, that the things I introduce conceptually in the story aren't going to be done anything similar within Marvel's publishing in the meantime. And I've certainly seen that happen in prior projects, things that I was working on for series like the Justice series 20 years ago. I could find like, wait a minute, that right there, you just undercut our entire thing in this storyline that's happening concurrent in the books. And you could have given us a heads up. You could have said, oh, you know what, there's going to be, area here that will be competitive to what you're doing. So I have a very key thing that I need to make sure that none of their authors are going to repeat either character types or whatever. And I've flagged things to communicate to, I'm dealing with the top brass at Marvel, which is C.B. Cebulski and Tom Brevoort.
Yes.
Even on the marketing end, Sven Larson. Well, that's not marketing. Anyways, he's a senior Marvel official. So all these people I'm communicating with to make sure they know what I'm expecting and what I'm holding out, that like, okay, before you guys do anything like this, I need to get there first because it's going to take me a full year to get my thing done. And then it's another year after that, practically, before it's in the hands of the retailers. So I need you guys to not kind of allow this or that writer to just suddenly come up with exactly the same stuff that I'm doing here, because they could. Even if this is something that's not been done in 80 years of continuity, I need to not watch it get redone. So I very much care what's happening in the here and now, and I follow it. I read a lot of books from both companies regularly. Apparently, I don't know about you, John, but for all my friends that I've made in this business in the last 30 some years, many of them go to conventions, which I don't, and they know all the people working the business because they hang out at shows. but none of them read comics. They don't read any of this stuff. How about you?
I absolutely do, man, because I want to talk about what's happening now. And also, given our ages, Alex, I can partition something that is a timeless story and that is alongside current continuity and again, social media, these current fans are like, well, that doesn't fit with what's happening now, so why how do you explain that? You don't have to explain it. It's a different story. I mean, to the point too of, well, the Justice League's in space, how can they have an Earthbound story? It didn't happen in the same week. I don't know how to break it to you. It's, they have lives outside of the story you're currently reading or a history. And I mean, I was really excited a couple of years ago. I want to say it was called like Infinite. I don't even remember what it was called, but it was when Josh Williamson was kind of the lead creative. And they had that great story that had all the different alternate Earths. And you had the 1939 Batman with 1950s or 60s Superboy. And it was this kind of, combination and stuff. And it's like, good. Tell those stories. I would love to see Mark Waid or yourself tell a 50s Superboy story with Ma and Pa at the general store in Smallville, with Chief Parker and all that stuff, or a great Silver Age Legion story and have them in the upside down rocket ship. It's like, no, all that stuff is fun. And don't get rid of fun because of continuity. Continuity should not be handcuffs. Continuity should be, okay, you're following the current soap opera. That's great. Here's another story. And it does seem like currently, with all the different Batman titles, certainly that are out there right now, that they are doing that. I mean, I guess there is some sort of, connection. And, well, again, Alfred is dead. Unless you're telling a flashback story, Alfred's got to be dead, which I think is a big mistake. Hey, Bendis and I, when Bendis revealed Clark to the world, he told me 6 months before it came out. And he and I really had, and again, we're friends enough that I'm like, is that a good idea? I'm like, I got to be honest, man. I go, because, I think there's such value to Clark's persona as Clark Kent. And he goes, well, he's all about truth and justice. I said, yeah, but if I'm just a guy, I am much more likely to tell Clark Kent, I'm kind of embarrassed of the person I was. I was an alcoholic. I was mean to my wife. I'm a deadbeat dad or whatever. If I'm talking to Superman, it's like meeting the Pope. And I'm not going to be like, well, you hear all my flaws and everything. And I'm like, and he's like, well, he's still going to be a reporter. I'm like, yeah, but Superman asking you questions and Clark Kent, the man, just asking you questions. And again, clearly that didn't last. Once Brian would stop writing it, the genie's back in the bottle and Clark Kent is back as he should be, in my opinion.
Now, they didn't spend any effort yet. I mean, because I'm not necessarily reading all those books, but I look at all of them. They haven't had him reappear, the Rogol-Zar, destroyer of Krypton.
No, I haven't seen Rogol-Zar, but honestly, that didn't bother me. Again, it's a
Really?
wrinkle. But, well, I like that it was a natural disaster. But that, and again, apples and oranges, man. Hey, fine. Okay, whatever. But I don't know if I've seen Rogol-Zar since Brian's time. I think you're right about that. And that's the thing. And that was Loeb's attitude was, okay, like he said when he wrote Superman for All Seasons, Mike Carlin, the editor, is like, hey, it's all in Smallville. How come we don't see him playing football? He goes, I don't believe that. Well, since John Byrne, he played football. He goes, yeah, but let's go back to Glenn Ford, that wonderful speech. I don't know why you're here, but you're not here to score touchdowns. And it's like, yeah, because that you do want to keep secret. You don't want to be so overt that Clark, I mean, that was even a small, not even a complaint, but I'm like, all right, they went back to it in Smallville, whatever. But yeah, so it is. And so his compromise was he put Clark in a Letterman sweater. He goes, maybe he got the Letterman sweater for being in the chess class, or maybe it's Jonathan's Letterman sweater that he wears. And Mike's like, okay, that's enough. But again, it's these little knit blue Superman, Alex. That's all I need to say. You know what I mean? Electric blue Superman. Which didn't they want you to draw Electric blue Superman back then for maybe one of your lithos of the Justice League or whatever? Well, I know they made you do. Okay, I know they made you do Kyle Rayner. Did you ever draw
only
long hair?
The only time I did that was to get in the door at DC. So that actually comes at the early '94 when I was having the first conversations with the editors over there about Kingdom Come. So I'd done one job for them before for a Superman cover for a children's novelization of the death of Superman. And otherwise, these first two gigs I got, one was a cover for Wizard, a special magazine that was about Superman and Batman. And so it was Superman with the long hair back to back with Batman, which was kind of I don't want to be doing this, but if I get my project up and running, I won't have to draw this long hair. So I'll just grin and bear it right now. And of course, I myself had very long hair at the time, and I was learning to not love it as much at that point, but because of what they were doing to Superman. And then the poster image was one that they threw at me, and I thought, well, it's a big showcase for me. So I want to show off that I can paint the DC characters, but none of those versions I was doing were really making me happy, because even though it was a relatively classic Captain Marvel or Wonder Woman within it, everybody else was changed. And these are all changes that have been rebooted since. And I wasn't confirmed yet on how I was going to approach characters like Batman quite in the modern era. But I knew what I was going to do in Kingdom Come. That was clear. That was already planned, but obviously hadn't been started yet. And when I did that painting, it was just to sort of say, okay, we're in business. We're working with each other here. You guys can trust me. I can be a team player for you guys. I'm bringing over everything I had at Marvel to you. And I didn't want to blow off the gig, because I thought, well, I don't want to draw Aquaman with the long hair and the hook. So I was trying to, even the design I probably liked the least was Kyle Rayner, not because it wasn't a good design. It was a good design. It was that you were telling the world that you could put the classic Hal Jordan design on the shelf and just say, well, this is now replacing it. Like, no, you can't replace. That's a better design. I'm happy Kyle Rayner can be an individual, but that Gil Kane costume is legend. That's comic book DNA. How do you throw that away? And for 10 years, they enforced that. So I would then never draw that character ever again, because I would be such a stick in the mud about it that, like, no, I'm not going to help you push this narrative because I don't believe it, and that would be true for a lot of those other characters. So,
well, and again, us being around as long as we have as readers, we see these changes. And again, I get it. You got to shake the story up. You got to do things to make a provocative choice that will get people going, hey, what the hell's going on? I got to read this and see where it goes. And eventually we get back, but then again, you've done great things, like when they handed you Cap Bucky, post Winter Soldier and everything. And you redesigned Cap's suit for Bucky and everything, which I thought was a great design because it paid homage to the original design, but had elements of that silver portion of the Winter Soldier's uniform.
No, the real thread for that, I was pushing back even against Ed Brubaker, who kept saying, can you give us one version of the design without the wings on the head? And I said, no, I cannot give it to you. Not one. I'm not going to draw that one time, because I was so afraid of Brian Hitch's Ultimates design influencing where they were going to go with the movie, which, of course, I was right to fear that, because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They got rid of the wings on the head because Brian showed them, like, they're silly. Why would you have them? Get rid of them. So instead of this character having this silhouette that we've known for, 7 decades, it's all going to be thrown away because of practicality. It's like, guys, we're going to lose everything based upon practicality. None of this stuff is practical, but I want Buccaneer boots and I want wings on the damn mask.
Attaboy.
And so I was doing that design with all the other modifications with one central focus, which was, I want you to see the head silhouette and say, those wings are there.
I get it. I absolutely get it. That's fantastic. I'm glad because honestly, I did want to ask you about some older stuff too. We're all anticipating the Fantastic Four movie, full circle, or not full circle.
Is anticipation the right word?
well, tell me, Alex. Honestly, are you nervous, or what? Tell me,
Very nervous. Yeah. I look. I mean, if it turns out to be a very great, well-directed movie that has a great story, I'll happily accept it as such. Aesthetically, I'm not happy. I think these are horrible costumes, and I'm not happy with casting. And I essentially was reached out to about it a year ago, and effectively I commented as much about casting. So I'm likely not to change my mind, but like anybody else, I kind of shrug and go along with it. But, in some ways, when I did Full Circle, I was trying to make a graphic novel for one audience, and that audience was Kevin Feige. It's like, please cast a guy who looks like Reed Richards.
Yeah.
by the time he reached out to me, he was there to say, well, this is who got cast. And then we spent like 20 minutes talking about who else he could have found. So it's, anyways, I won't share the details of that, but I ruined my time to talk to the guy, basically kind of, saying, well, all right, it's...
Pedro Pascal's a wonderful actor. And honestly, I didn't see him as Max Lord, but it was fine. A great Mandalorian. But no, I'm with you. And honestly, man, because of Full Circle, I got to talk to Gary Conway. I don't know. Remember if I had told you that?
Oh,
but,
I don't. Maybe you did, but okay.
I don't know.
How did that go?
It went wonderfully because he was so happy, and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm well into my 80s, and I got my Marvel movie because of Alex." And it's like, yes, you did. And Alex, it is so great because much like I always felt Robert Palmer would have been a fantastic number 6 from The Prisoner because he has those Kirby eyes. And I think Gary Conway, too, has those Kirby eyes. And I never thought of him as Reed until I learned that was your inspiration for Mr. Fantastic in Full
Wait,
Circle.
who's Robert Palmer? Not the singer?
Yeah, the singer. Bad Case of Loving You and all that stuff and Power Station and all that.
Okay, that is
to
okay.
me,
I got the right guy.
To me, he looked like number 6. I'm like, oh, put him in the blazer and everything, and put him in the Village, and there's your new number 6. As far as I was concerned, he channeled McGowan in a weird way to me.
Oh, that's funny. Wow. Okay. Hey, he was great. I loved Robert Palmer, but wow.
Not an actor, obviously, and sadly no longer with us. But
Yeah.
no, that was great, and I adored talking to Gary because my God, that opened so many doors. Obviously, we talked Land of the Giants, and we talked about Teenage Frankenstein and his whole very interesting career. He's a fascinating guy. So no, I can tell you, without I don't know if he ever reached out to you and said thank you.
Yeah. We
I'm
had.
so glad he did.
The truth is that much like all the other celebrity licenses I've stolen over the years, I didn't ask before I did it, and I was drawing him in various pieces for a while, a number of covers and sketches and various things. So I was planning around Gary's likeness, and then once it was getting around the anniversary of the book, they reached out to me, and I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this thing, which eventually evolved into the imprint of Marvel Arts and the graphic novel for Full Circle, I figured, I'd better reach out because at least I also had the hint that he might be accepting of this because he had reposted an image of himself drawn by me on his social media. So given that, I figured, okay, we'll get a hold of the guy and make sure, he understands what you're about to do and how much you're using his likeness. But technically, for the sake of rights and whatnot, I actually really wasn't working from photos of Gary Conway. I sculpted a little head of Gary based upon looking at his face, and I photographed that as my reference source. So it was like this one more dot removed. So yes, of course, I'm inspired by Gary Conway, but you can call it inspired by, not based on, which is legalese in a weird way, but there's almost this connection dots of course, he is the guiding light, his face, his impression. And of course, it's the weird thing of, I'm probably one of the only fans who could come to him in life to say, hey, I love you from this thing, but I never grew up seeing it. It wasn't in syndication where I lived.
Land of the Giants.
I only learned about his likeness in my 30s when a friend shared an art book it was a photo book that had images from science fiction television. And I saw this face and I thought, that's the Jack Kirby Reed Richards face, So I was very, driven to say, I love Russell Johnson from Gilligan's Island, which I've been drawing for so many years as Reed Richards.
Yes.
Because to me, that's what Reed felt like growing up. He felt like that guy.
Yeah.
So it worked very well for me. But now I was thinking, but Jack Kirby drew a very specific thing. And now that I've seen that face in reality, I think I need to draw that guy. And so I made a whole detour. It's almost like if I decided, you know what, I'm going to not do my model's face for Superman, and I'm just going to do this whole other dude. Let's say I'm just drawing David Corenswet. that'd be fine. I could make that change. My model's face was a specific kind of Superman, and that's what I'd always been consistent with. But it's also fun to draw Chris Reeve. I'm as attached to him as anything. So anyway, so yeah, Gary was very accommodating.
Alex, I'll ask because I know we've been in an hour. Are we okay for time? I like my marathon conversations, and I don't want to overstay my welcome, but there is so much more I want to cover.
Oh yeah, please.
All right, excellent, man. That's great. Well, again, the way that you have used actors in your stuff, the Green Hornet Batman crossover covers, and that was so great. Or even, and I know it's in your art books as well. Your painting of George Reeves flying over the Batmobile, and it's Adam West and Burt Ward and George Reeves. No, those are great, Alex, and that's the great thing, man. I mean, you capture these moments in time of things that didn't happen, but you cast them well. Your Linda Carter's as well, and my God, as we've talked about before, your wonderful Universal Monster Blu-ray covers, those paintings that you did, that to me are like, hey, this scene could have happened in the movie. It doesn't. But Alex is giving us an image that easily could have been slotted into the Todd Browning and James Whale movies of that era and everything. So no, I appreciate that kind of stuff, and it's wish fulfillment because we're all like, oh man, I know it was a decade apart, but wouldn't it have been great if George Reeves and Adam West could have had a World's Finest kind of crossover? My God, that would have been amazing.
Well, that's where AI will take it that next step further, because I think we'll be getting stuff like that created by the general public eventually.
Well, we're already getting it, Alex, unfortunately, on YouTube. I hear you, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think you were going to get long form content with eventual full acting and voices and the whole thing. And we know that AI is going to replace a lot of the stuff that's been the problem of Uncanny Valley and CG effects of capturing people is not showing up in the AI stuff in the same way. And so AI obviously is going to continue to improve. And so these things, this is the one side effect outside of removing all of our jobs in the creative world. We'll at least get things brought to life that you never would have imagined. And it's going to be democratized to the point of anybody wants to spend the time working with AI to create a longer form content. They build out whole narratives. I'm assuming eventually the interactivity of it will allow AI to follow storytelling scripts, directions, storyboards, designs, everything you would want to feed it, it will work with like a movie studio does.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Is there a concern personally about the encroachment of AI on what you do?
Less so for me, only that my name allows me to still get to make things at the moment, and that may change in the future here. It's, like my time's finite, and
Sure.
It's more a concern for others that like this should destroy people's endeavor to become creative and say like, I don't need to bother to learn all these skills. Well, that's a loss because it's a need for us as human beings to be as involved as we can be. And just to entrust everything creative and thinking over to a machine doesn't work out well, which, by the way, I mentioned this story. I apologize for going off on this rant here. It's just a weird thing. I was watching on MeTV, the Toon show, an old Super Friends cartoon last night. And once I saw what it was, I thought, oh, I'm going to watch this all the way to the end because it's got a Plastic Man cameo at the end of the show. And it's one of those things I remember seeing when I was like 5 years old. Okay. So we're talking 45 or whatever. No, 50 years ago. Geez, it's okay. So it's like 1975. Okay. So basically this cartoon, I'm struck by the story in it because it's a massive supercomputer that's being used to replace all these tasks in normal life. Okay. And that's the subject of what's happening in the story. And it, of course, gets sabotaged by a tiny mouse that only Plastic Man can reach that's inside the mechanisms. But as I'm watching this thing, and it's an hour-long episode, which I didn't know they were hour-long shows then. But the storyline is basically about how many aspects of human life are being replaced by this supercomputer, which is like practically miles long of computer banks that need to do this, is doing things as well as replacing the images you see on television with virtual representations of people. So all the performers, broadcasters, actors, whatever, everything you see now. And this is described by the members of the Justice League as that's what's happening. And this is what's going to be provided in the service of this machine, which the name of the machine is Geek. It's an acronym that has a different spelling, but it's called the Geek.
Hilarious.
And I'm watching this thing going like, holy Christ, was this prophetic to right now? This is 50 years ago. And we're talking about this is where things are going right now. And the idea of entrusting over our world, our lives to a machine, all the arguments for what human need is to be involved, creative, do things for yourself, do tasks for yourself. All these things are being made in this 50-year-old cartoon. And now we're in this fight right at the moment. It's so freaking bizarre.
Have you seen, and I'm betting you have, because again, we're close enough in age, I am so stunned that whatever movie studio made this I believe 1970 or 71 movie with Eric Braeden and Susan Clark, Colossus, The Forbidden Project. Do you remember that movie?
Right. Yo, yeah.
And really, that's AI taking over the world. And really, it ends badly. And it's great. And it's like, I am stunned. And I don't think they've missed the window per se, but it really would have had a bigger impact about 3 or 4 years ago if it came out then and scared a lot of people because, yeah, I mean, and it's if people, you got to look it up. I don't even think it's even in DVD, let alone I mean, it might be VHS or whatever, but yeah,
I thought that actually got a re-release. I thought I read about
maybe
that. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd look it up.
Then I'm stunned that Turner Classic Movies or some of the other movie channels haven't put it back out there because, my God, it absolutely is. Guess what? Here we are. I mean, we're worried about the monkeys evolving and taking us over and enslaving us in a couple of hundred years or whatever. The computers are going to beat them to it. And then, of course, we have Skynet and, Terminator and everything. But yeah, it's that's surprising. So no, I hear you, man. I absolutely hear you. And by the way, I've been loving Me Tunes as well. I've been watching Speed Racer. And I forgot how violent and scary Speed Racer was. And of course, back then, it's another cartoon. All right, what's that? Oh, Tom and Jerry's on after that. Fine, whatever. But my God, that's a creepy cartoon, and I adore it. And if anything, I'm enjoying it more now.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it would control. I mean, the effect of that imported animation in the '60s would make the whatever standards and practices kick up to be much more constrictive throughout the '70s and early '80s. It was just like a stranglehold around animation, and it would only get kind of broken apart from the mid '80s out to now, where they finally started to allow some more practical engagement of, because they didn't want imitative behavior for kids, so they didn't want kids to want to be violent, but at the same time, it was like, you talk about the whole complaint of the nanny state, like, oh my God, this was at an extreme. And of course, I don't know where things fall now in terms of what your value for animation is, but we would wish our kids were so influenced by cartoons that they somehow want to imitate them today. Video games took over all of that, and they long since abdicated any sort of controls on like making sure, like, we don't want these kids to be exposed to violent entertainment. Like, what, are you kidding me? It's, cats out of the, some metaphor that's appropriate is better placed here.
I'm with you, man. No, and honestly, I'm glad. It seems to have taken about 20 years for American animation from DC and Marvel to catch up and go, no, so I remember when Levitz was at Wizard World Chicago and introducing that first Superman Doomsday animated movie that is obviously very different from the story we got from everybody back in the 90s. But that said, and then people are like, well, are we going to get the Judas Contract? Are we going to get, various, are we going to get Kingdom Come for that matter? And he's like, well, we got to take this careful, and we got to remember that, this is made for a younger audience as well. So we got to be careful. Well, the filter's off. I mean, my God, they've done Batman Year One. They've done Watchmen. Even some of the original stories that they've made in the last few years in animation, let alone the other American animation that is made that isn't, well, both the humor, but also the straight up, drama that they've done animated. It seems like they understand that, no, there's an adult audience that likes this stuff. I mean, you and I have loved it since, G-Force and Battle for the Planets back in the day. So we've always, and Speed Racer for that matter, in the 60s. So yeah, we're all cool with it. And I'm glad that finally animation is allowed to be as raunchy as it needs to be,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I want more of is like their animation that they did for the adaptation of Watchmen recently was to match the actual art style of the comics, which it did successfully. And in a way, the direct-to-video stuff that Marvel started doing promised that, I'm sorry, DC started doing, promised that when they started with New Frontier, matching Darwin's art style, but virtually everything they did thereafter didn't achieve that. So when they did Judas Contract, it of course wasn't matching George Perez. They didn't bother.
True.
And I would like to see them do more things like they just completed with Watchmen. Marvel's got a certain kind of style with their high-end animation, but they're not trying to match specific artists, with the exception of the guy who worked on this Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show, who's a newer artist who suddenly got plucked to do this design work, and then the show matches his art style perfectly. And I love his art style, but I wonder, it's Romero, right? That's the guy's name?
I don't remember his name, but I loved Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man's look. It was fantastic. Absolutely.
But it just still throws me that, wait a minute, there's all these other people we wanted to see the stuff match and never has really been successfully pulled off. I love his art style, so I'm very happy with what we're getting. But, well, if you can match any artist style, can we get eventually a Neil Adams cartoon? Or, where all the line work is there, where all the, the stuff they can do with CG can match the things that were done with the pen. And that's one of the frontiers left to be crossed over that, again, AI may be able to bring that to life faster than an animation studio will, but who knows? That's at least something I still want to see in the future before, before we're all being spoon-fed by machines.
I hear you. And doesn't it suck, Alex? I mean, I know these guys are older than us. And also, they've had their health issues, which sadly took them away from us. Guys like Neil and George and stuff. But man, it really sucks that our heroes, as far as art goes and stuff, they're not around anymore, man. I mean, that's time, and I realize that. But yeah, I so miss those guys. I loved what Neil was doing right up to the end, and same with George, same with Will Eisner for that matter, right till the end.
Well, when you think about how, I mean, in some ways, not to value one person against another, but the fact that Kirby was taken so much earlier, not that he didn't get to be older, but the fact that all this stuff that has happened in these 30 some years since his passing, we have this loss of, he didn't get to see the validation of his impact, and his sort of moving on made him more powerful in death than in life, much like Obi-Wan. He really is a constant presence. So in a way, what he feeds us, and what could be true for these other people as we are still affected by their work and guided by it, they should not go away. The effect of Neil Adams can be seen in reappraisal of everything he gave over 50 some years, 60 years of comics. So I think that, there's going to be ways we're still engaging with these people as if they're actively part of our lives. And of course, their children are with us, but it's still something where we need to have acknowledgement of these forces, that just them not being able to get that verification of seeing their work handled in a way that truly honors them, that's not the end of the story. It's going to keep going, and we're going to keep elevating these people. I mean, there was no appreciation for certain artists in their lifetime, and that's just, these guys got some love. Kirby definitely was told a million times over how much people were affected by him, so he got love, thankfully.
Did you ever meet him, Alex?
Oh, I did, yeah. In fact, I published a photo of it recently in the the re-release of my FF book was in this expanded edition that came out last year, and it's got all these extra doodads. I recommend it to anybody that liked the first book because it's oversized, it's treasury sized, and in it I told the story of when I got to meet Jack and the photo of my long-haired 22-year-old self with Jack Kirby. So I both prize and cringe at the photo.
Did he see your stuff? Did he get to see your work at all?
I don't think so. Mark Evanier tells a different story. He says that he showed Jack the poster recreation I did for the FF #1 cover, and that Jack didn't dislike it. Now, that's not really my story to tell because I thought, wait a minute, I don't know that that came out in '93, but maybe it did, and I just don't remember it right because, Jack died, I think, moments after the third issue of Marvels had come out in early '94.
Okay.
So the timing of it is that unlikely he would have seen that, where it was a tribute to him, the whole issue. Yes. And all the stuff I would do thereafter that would involve various tribute aspects to Jack's work, he wouldn't be around for, I know, but Mark seems to think this. I'd love it to be true, but I don't want to hold on to the wish that it would be.
I'm hip. I get it. God, I'm glad we brought up Marvels because I really did want to do a little greatest hits with you. Did Marvels start with you or Kurt, or how did Marvels happen?
Marvels is kind of built off of a concept of me wanting to rip off the Hellraiser anthology that Marvel was doing back in 1990, and or maybe it was as early as '89 they had started doing that. But I wanted to make a pitch to them, and I came up with this idea of representing Marvel Comics #1, the original Marvel publication from '39, rebranding it as making it an anthology book. And so I put together my pitch being a 12-page story I did with painted pages of the original Human Torch. And at that time, the only Marvel editor I knew, who I thought was an editor, but only edited one book, was Kurt Busiek. And that's because Kurt had reached out to me to work on one story for an anthology that then got canceled before the issue mine was going to come out in. So I did that story for him. I maintained contact with him enough to know when he moved out to the West Coast from New York. I sent him my pitch then to say, hey, what do you think about this going to Marvel? And he said, they're not going to like it because they just canceled Marvel Fanfare. That was an anthology. They don't want another one of the same thing. And I'm like, but they're doing Hellraiser regularly. I mean, that's a big painted anthology. Shouldn't they be doing the same format with their own characters? That's what I was pitching. And so anyways, it led eventually to those samples being shared, the Human Torch pages being shown as like my portfolio effectively, as well as other pinup shots I did of various Marvel figures. Kurt talked me into doing an Iron Man proposal pitch that was submitted back in 1991. As far as we know, the editor for that, who I later met and talked to, and said, did you ever get this thing? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Interesting.
But
was that your take on Iron Man as Timothy Dalton, Tony Stark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is fantastic casting, but go on.
I did a painted mock-up cover for it that was eventually reprinted or printed for the first time in Marvel Zero. But the character stuff I did for it, I did a sample pen and ink page. I thought I could be the pencil artist for it and maybe get to paint the covers. But Kurt was trying to talk me into, this book is going to be free for creators. John Byrne was leaving it as the writer, and he thought, I could get this book, and Iron Man's his favorite character, and because I did a pinup painted portrait of Iron Man amongst my Marvel's stuff, he thought that, like, you probably like Iron Man too. Let's go after this book. And so I participated with a pitch that ultimately was never seen. But in the meantime, Kurt had shared copies of my pitch with Eclipse Comics, which led to me getting at least one published short story with them, which was in a Miracle Man series. And that was probably my second published comic stuff after my Terminator series for Now Comics. And then the weirdest part is that they had all this licensing. It's such a long roundabout story, but I apologize for it.
Not at
They
all.
had this relationship with Clive Barker because they were doing adaptations in graphic novel format of the Tapping the Vein stories, which were anthology books he had done. And so to get Clive's approval, they didn't ask the talent first. They would send him samples of the people's work and say, what do you think of these guys? And then they would offer you a story. They did offer me a story. And I said, I don't think I'm into that horror stuff like that. And then I get a phone call directly from Clive Barker to my job, which was then in advertising in Chicago. And I was literally not at my desk. So I'm walking back towards it. And the group secretary, not my personal secretary, she worked for the entire artist team I was part of. She says, oh, Alex, I have a Clive Barker on the phone for you. And I thought, these friends of mine. Jeez. And so I pick up the phone and then I answer it like I'm talking to a buddy of mine going, well, hello, Clive. And then I hear a voice that makes my heart sink with like, oh my God, this is the real Clive Barker. Oh, dear God, what is he calling me for? And the truth of it is that he had been given those samples of the Human Torch story. And he said, I got this storyline we're going to be doing over at Marvel with the Hellraiser book, where I'm contributing some new concepts to it. And I want to have you design the character concepts and do the first story. And I thought, oh, dear God, okay, sure. I guess I'm not knowing what I'm getting in for, but I figure like this is the big call you're waiting for, something to break open wide for you. And within like an hour, I was talking to my future Marvel's editor, Marcus McLaurin, who had been already given the samples from Clive. I mean, he must have shipped them to him in the mail. So however these things are passing along or getting recopied or whatever, they're winding up in the office of Marvel in the hands of an editor without me having a proper pitch behind it or an explanation of my intentions. So I get to make that pitch over the phone to that editor. And it then gets to build steam over time. And I said how I was first talking with Kurt Busiek about it. And I said, well, maybe he could work with me on this thing. So it evolves into a project that gets nurtured into existence as its own limited series that's only going to be drawn by me, that's going to be a single storyline as opposed to a series of short stories for different talents to do. So my anthology turns into a single vehicle for a single talent and single storyline, which is fine. But it wasn't what I created it for. And basically, the oddity is in 1990, when I was 20 years old, I painted that Marvel's #1 cover, but it was for the anthology. And it had a frame logo design for it that was the word Marvel, because I thought that would be a great logo frame for a book about Marvel Comics. That's just a catch-all, all Marvel. Kurt came up with the idea of adding the letter S, and now you made it plural, and now it's a thing we call these people who pop up with these powers. Great spark of ingenious spin. It's worked with us ever since. And now we have a movie that stole our name. but ultimately, it evolved in the direction it was in from all these different forces. And, because Kurt at least got my stuff passed along that led to these different jobs. And of course, I did do that Hellraiser job just to keep the door open. I wasn't going to say, I'd rather not do this thing because I don't care about Hellraiser. I don't want to draw any Cenobites, but I wound up designing like half a dozen Cenobites and all these human characters that I based on actors' likenesses. Like one of the guys is clearly John Cleese, and I made Freddie Mercury this kind of punk character. All these different faces I used from real people. But, I did this story just to make sure I wasn't somehow closing the door on the opportunity to get the Marvel thing rolling, and that would evolve into what ultimately Kurt would start to beat it into shape. But we were going to make it disconnected kind of stories of things where I wanted to meet this character and meet that character throughout history. So they were kind of like interconnected short stories with a central reporter meeting these people. And then at some point, Kurt said, well, let's make him a photographer. Then it's very visual. It's about the visuals of seeing this stuff in real life, which was a great innovation at that point. And then the final piece was the then editor-in-chief, Tom DeFalco, had said, you guys shouldn't base your pitch around made-up stories set in the past. You should do it on real stories, real events that happen in Marvel history. And that was the final piece that caused the entire outline to be thrown out, rewritten. But the framing of it is odd because it still involved a beginning of the birth of the Human Torch, starting from there. And so I was ultimately wound up re-illustrating much of what I had done in my pitch in a new way from a different perspective. And then part of my original pitch was pin-up shots I did of various Marvel characters I would want to highlight. And one of those was Gwen Stacy. And so we ended the series on her death as if that was a sort of closure moment in history. So you're kind of going through the Golden Age to the end of the Silver Age, and everything that follows to the modern day is the modern age of comics, you know. But it sort of built off of this implied framework I had, which wasn't really a framework, you know. So
no, Alex, that was wonderful. The whole thing. That's great, man. And again, I think a lot of viewers and listeners right now are like, I had no idea it started with Hellraiser. That's fantastic, man. So crazy stuff. And yes, my God, the way Phil Shelton, right? Isn't that the photographer?
Sheldon,
excuse me. His appreciation of Gwen, and Gwen being this just average person well before she knew who Peter was, or that, you know, well, she never knew, I guess, that Peter was Spider-Man. But, you know, yeah, that she's just as much, she's looking to the sky. And especially in that first issue, when all the timely heroes are parachuting down or whatever. I mean, just these spectacular images, Alex, that really, you really invigorated my love again for comics. I never emotionally left. But, you know, I'm a few years older, so I was out of college. And, you know, when you're in your 20s, every dollar counts.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden I would see the posters for Marvels, and I'm like, what the hell is this? This is amazing. And truly, again, I stayed for Marvels. I went away again. And then when I saw the posters for Kingdom Come, I'm like, oh, this is the Marvels guy. Shit, I'm back. And, you know, I think I've told you well before that, when you were doing Burning Earth for Terminator, I worked at the bank that had now comics accounts. And I hope this doesn't inspire a lawsuit of lost royalties. But, man, I kept seeing those checks coming into now for Terminator, Burning Earth. And I was in customer service. So they would call about their accounts. And I'd teasingly go, how's the Green Hornet doing? How's Speed Racer doing? Whatever. I'm like, what's this Terminator Burning Earth? And the guy that was handling their business side is like, oh, my God, we have this local artist, Alex Ross. And what he has done, he goes, my God, the pages he's delivered us, it's like another Terminator movie. And it's in a graphic novel. I'm like, well, that sounds amazing. I got to find this guy, and I got to find that book. So truly, man, you brought me back. I'm like,
well, let me mention one of the dark things, and I don't think this will prompt a lawsuit here, just to mention how it happened, because it actually prompted a lawsuit back then. My first experience out of comics was to have to sue my then employer because they paid me only up through the fourth issue, and then none of the fifth, and nothing for the trade collection. So I got no royalties, nor did I get paid for the cover of that. So basically, they paid me until there was a faltering of the business, and I think they stopped paying everybody at a certain point in 1990. So I got a lawyer. The lawyer went to court, and what I was owed was just over 10 grand. But basically, I wound up, I think there was a judgment in my favor. The difference is that basically they declared Chapter 11, which was dissolving the business. And it's 11, right? That was the dissolving.
I believe that's the kind that dissolves the business. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, I then had to be taught at the age of 20 that, like, oh yeah, sorry, kid, no money for you. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? How does this work? This is the way
Yeah,
the
you
law
won.
works?
Yeah, you won, but you didn't get paid. Yeah.
You won, but you lost everything. And then the irony would be, in a year, the guy whose company it was under the name of, technically his company owed me money, not the entity Now Comics. That was just a licensable name that could be sold off as an asset. So basically, he could then get rehired by somebody else funding a new Now Comics, and they could get half of the same property licenses, go back to business,
Wow.
and then suddenly you're making new comics without having paid any of the people you stiffed.
Yeah.
And I get a call from the same publisher basically saying, hey, we know you owe you money. So here's the thought. You do this new comic for us and we'll pay you this much on top of every page you do to pay for the debt of the old money. And of course, you obviously think, if you want goodwill with me, you pay off the debt. You don't just get free new work. You don't get me locked into some new deal. It's like, you're the devil, for God's sakes. I'm not going to get involved with you again. And it was, that really poisoned me to the nature of how business works in our field. It's just, there's so much. What the law allows means that it's not criminality. It's just legal.
Yeah, but bad business practices, unfortunately, and cautionary tale that has been repeated by other publishers and businessmen for decades since. So yeah, and even decades prior. My
Yeah.
God, I hope
Yeah.
that the guys that are getting the special thanks in the at the end credits of Superman, some of those golden and silver age names I didn't initially recognize, and it's like, wow, I really hope an estate and grandchildren are getting something beyond special thanks, and I have no idea.
Oh, well, I can tell you, I haven't seen a dime yet, and that's my symbol up. Now,
Yes, it is.
I've inquired. I've said, hey, something instead of nothing would be nice. And of course, somebody like James Gunn has no idea what happens on this side of things. He's kept in the dark about this, but him making the decision to take the Kingdom Come S and now making it the official movie S. You wish you had some sort of word in there to say, like, yeah, sure, make sure they pay me something.
Sure.
And it would be a one-time payment. I wouldn't be due a royalty. The estate for Jerry Siegel gets money regularly for all their stuff. And that's the deal that was worked out a while ago. I wish that there are no heirs for Joe Shuster. There were siblings for him, but no heirs.
Yes.
And somehow that's not transferable, which, I don't know, recently there was a lawsuit that was settled between the estates of Ditko, Lieber, and Don Heck with Marvel that I don't think went to court, or no, there was some court action, I guess, in this, but ultimately depositions that were taken. I know that. I don't know if how the order of these things, but basically that's all over with.
Yes.
And so there was no children of Ditko, but his nephew is going to get something now, which I think that's fine. That sounds great, but
Agreed.
Nothing for Schuster's family, weirdly, the best I understand. So Siegel, yes. Schuster, well, again, he had no children. So, but as far as the rest of us in that list, that's why we all need this Superman movie to make a lot of money so that they can say, okay, we can throw some dollars out here to make sure that people like me aren't doing abundant interviews like this one complaining that we saw nothing for it. And it becomes more of a PR control thing. It gets marked as a discretionary bonus, meaning they owe you nothing, except they don't want you to be a pain in their ass.
Sure.
So right now we're being a pain in their ass by even sharing this story.
Well, again, I know that retroactively they compensated you for some images that were used in the Stargirl TV series after our conversation. I thought that
I don't know that they did. I mean, they paid me something for a number of CW uses years ago.
Okay.
And it was, very minor.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where, I saw money that was generous enough from some of the films where you thought, like, okay, they say I'm an influence on Superman Returns. I don't see it, but I got a little bit of money. And it wasn't unpleasant. And even the Justice League movie, which I got nothing to do with the movie you saw, But the ad campaign where they recreated a piece of art that I did in photography with the model, with the people, that I got a check for. And now I'm waiting to see if I get anything for this. But, you know, it does affect the support of how much you want to be in business with the company entity.
Yeah.
And, you know, let's just say I have a much more collegial relationship with Marvel at present in the way they've handled things. So DC has mostly had a better reputation over the last several decades of looking after people. That was something they could kind of lord over Marvel. And it kind of comes and goes in terms of who's a little bit more considerate that way. At the moment, Marvel's up. And DC could be up again if they, you know, take care of many of us who saw things of ours in this film.
I hear you, buddy. And truly, I hope that the executive powers that be that are above editorial are given that message and everyone is fairly.
Oh, it doesn't go. The only reason any of this money gets dispersed is it ends at the DC level. It never goes to the corporate level.
To the Warner Brothers level.
So I basically, if I get something, it'll be because Jim Lee and a couple other people inside the company decide that, like, what I get and what level it's at. You know, they make these choices based upon a pool of money they're given in terms of here's profit that is being shared within the company, and carving out of that, here's what we feel comfortable we can hand off to anybody. And so you wish it would go to the corporate level, but the corporate level would say, we don't know anything about it. Don't have it come back and be a problem for us.
Sure. Well, and I understand. I again, this is what sucks about when conglomerates buy these creative companies. That hey, we didn't make that deal or whatever. I do understand anecdotally that some have gone to Jim Lee and said, hey, you know, you use this in something recent, and that Jim has, as I understand it anecdotally, said, I will talk to the lawyers and we will get to the bottom of this. And so I would say honestly, and I'm saying it also for the purposes of this video, if DC people are watching, that as I understand it, Jim has been a good ambassador, and when approached with this kind of thing, I hope you will have that opportunity.
Well, I know he gives comfort to people with what he might say, but it doesn't necessarily always manifest that way. So
I hear you. Well, again, and really, that's what sucks right now. You know, these bad choices by the corporations have caused a lot of us to kind of be concerned about the future of some of these companies, to the point where, well, maybe they're going to stop actually publishing comics themselves, Warner's and Disney, and we will see these companies license these to IDW or, you know, Mad Cave or some of the other Vault companies that are out there now. Do you read any of that stuff, Alex? I mean, I've really been enjoying like what Mad Cave has been doing with Flash Gordon lately. I think it's great stuff. I'll be honest.
I don't love their Flash Gordon comic, and I'm very intimate to that subject because I don't like them throwing out the physicality of, you know, the original. I mean, making Ming an alien seems like an overreach of saying we have to get away from this Asian stereotype of the Fu Manchu goatee. Sure. It just seems like, come on, man, relax. At this point, it's been more, you know, it's an overthink as far as I'm concerned with that. But their Gotchaman comic is excellent. And at least I could look back at the one I worked on directly with Manur Sharif and Wilson Tortosa for the Top Cow stuff. And for the time that we did a dozen issues of that, I could say, oh, that was actually really good. When I've pulled it out again and looked at it and realized Wilson did a phenomenal job and we covered a lot of ground, and I'm happy with that. So at least I don't have to feel like, God, we sucked and it took this long for somebody to make a good comic. Thankfully, Mad Cave's making very good comics of Gotchaman. And, you know, I at least, and I don't have that feeling like, man, I need to be the one in there doing the work myself to touch these properties. Like, I did it already. I did a load of artwork of those characters. So
I'm aware. Yeah.
You know, I'm happy to get more content of them. It's ironic that, like, that comic book, if I can say, fulfills currently an idea in it where the idea that there was other people in training to be those ninja, special science ninja assassins or whatever you call them, and so a subgroup of gotcha men. And that was the first thing that the Sandy Frank Company had asked us to do. And so I started planning for it, and Manur Sharif and I had discussed this. And then ironically, then I guess the way it was being negotiated further, they said, well, we want to basically make these guys become the new G-Force, give them their own property of build up for animation and new stories and whatnot. And then once I realized what they were planning is they wanted to cut out Tatsunoko, the parent company from Japan, because they owned the trademarks for Battle of the Planets and G-Force. They did not own those specific characters because they were clearly the license. But if they had somebody like me create new bird-themed costume characters, then they own those.
Wow.
And they said, like, oh, we'll cut you in on it. However, whatever promises were made. And I thought, the only reason I'd be making these is to have them fit with the Tatsunoko version. So you want to cut out the people who actually brought this to you. And I didn't know if there was any taking care of original creators who worked for Tatsunoko who built that stuff up for them. That's obviously very literally foreign to me. But the thing is, I thought, like, that seems squirrely, and so we never advanced that storyline, but we were planning for it. And we just thought we got to get the book up and running first before we get around to telling the story of these other characters. And I had a whole plot thing myself, and it was talked through with Manur and whatever. And then it just never happened. So now, not the same plot, not the same handling, or there's no design similarities whatsoever. They haven't, as far as I could tell, made specific bird costumes for these new characters, but neither did I technically. All I knew is I wanted to make a character based upon a cardinal. So you had a bright red one.
Interesting.
I just thought our state bird would be a wonderful gotcha man.
Wow. I only knew about Sandy Frank. I didn't make the connection back during the Battle of the Planets days, but those Mystery Science Theater 3000 presentations of a lot of the Japanese knockoffs of like Time of the Apes and things like that were Sandy Frank distributed here in the States. And they would always make fun of, Sandy Frank, here we go again, because we knew it was going to be some low budget. They were like the Asylum or some of these other low rent companies that come up with, movie knockoffs of the big movies and stuff, which I appreciate from a cheese standpoint. But that is interesting. So yeah, that's sadly consistent with the Sandy Frank that the Mystery Science Theater guys presented to us. So interesting.
It is weird too to think that, like, I mean, what is this, like a 20-year difference between they had licensed that stuff in the late 70s to have on television after Star Wars to try and have something that seemed like a cartoon like Star Wars.
Yep.
So they bought the stuff, readapted it, gave it a generic name that sounds like Star Wars Battle of the Planets. So of course we know the original story is Earthbound. It has nothing to do with space, really. So, but we didn't know that as kids. And, the idea that 20 years later, Sandy Frank's still licensing it is utterly bizarre. I mean, it must have been like a long contract where the Tatsunoko must have thought, well, nobody else is asking for it, so we'll just keep, re-upping with these guys. So...
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So next year is the Kingdom Come 30th anniversary, isn't it? 96? Yeah, 96 to 2026. Are there plans, and are you involved with any special 30th anniversary edition? No.
Not that it's been approached to me about. I mean, I'd love to have a final like a treasury format version of it, because that's what I wish it was. The thing that really stinks with the legacy of Kingdom Come is that any new version of it you could see is based upon not the film that was shot, scans of the film that they have files for. So that's all that remains. So anytime it's reproduced, it's a low res version of what that artwork is. and
Wow.
it only holds up so well. So any collector who's ever gotten pages, which they would have bought 20 some years ago, you know, they would know by being able to compare that original artwork to the printed page what the difference is. And there's no assembling all that stuff back together to get a better scan of it. I mean, the only downside of my selling off the artwork is that reason. It's not like I wish I could get the money from selling it today, what it would be worth now. It's more, I wish we had a record of all that work
I
that
hear
was
you.
better than what they have in hand.
Wow. Oh, that's sad, Alex. We were talking off the air about these new treasury-sized things that have come out recently, and yeah, man, of course. And I told you, Jurgens and I were talking about the cover you did for Superman Fantastic Four, but and we weren't sure. And then he's like, no, no, no. Alex's Power of Hope for Shazam, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the other titles of Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, but those wonderful oversized Treasury editions. And you and I grew up with the ones from the '70s. Uh, no, it's great that they've returned to that format. Yeah, I would love to see any. Well, first of all, Kingdom Come. Do you have anything left of that original stuff, or did you sell even process pages and things? Do you have anything of your
Oh, I knew I was going to sell off the bulk of it because it's, I thought, oh, I don't know, what do I need to hold on to this
different
for?
world? Yeah, different world, Alex. Of
But,
course.
well, not just that. I wanted just like you went to an exhibit of mine showing off that artwork in the museum there. I wanted that kind of feeling back then when I was 27. No, I was 26 when it came out. So
Okay.
basically, later that year, I think I probably had the first exhibit of artwork at a New York based comic art gallery. And it was nice to have that kind of presentation to feel like a big shot where
Yeah.
people came to see the stuff in person. So if I didn't have that instinct then and I held on to my stuff like some creators have, not a lot of creators do that, but some famously have, like Jerry Ordway, I believe, did.
Hmm.
I could have had all that stuff longer to the point that it could have been around for the scanning improvement that now we can have files of things that are so the quality so outstanding you would never have to care about owning the originals. But I just wanted that experience of the showcase back when I was young and desperate for attention, that wanted to be seen as, look at me, I'm like a big fine artist.
I'm glad that leap happened for you, Alex, because truly it's well deserved. And not only here at the Dunn Museum currently with the Heroes and Villains exhibit, I'll remind people we talked about it at the beginning of the conversation, but also, God, being at the Rockwell Museum. My God, that had to have like really touched you because I'm sure he
Oh
was
yeah.
an influence on you.
Oh yeah.
Again, it's that hard, and that is my one thing regarding AI that and again maybe because we're older, Alex, I don't know, but you feel the soul of the artist when you are seeing an original thing, and even reprinted in magazine form or book form, you feel that connection to the artist. I don't know if that's going to matter to the younger generations, but I can say, as contemporarily speaking, that even though these AI recreations are really impressive, there is this kind of veneer of not connecting in the way that you do. Of no, I know Alex Ross put his brush on these paintings, and the same with Rockwell or any fine artist and stuff. So I mean, it is great that you're getting this treatment for your modern stuff. So at least that's happening for you. But yeah, that is my only comment about AI, that there is
Well,
some dispassion.
but we've been stepping close to AI just by the fact that you've got the majority of people working in the arts now, whether it's comics or any other form of illustration, working only digitally. And they're not getting a chance to touch pencil paper, and many of them could care less.
True.
Um, or some, it's simply the practicality. It goes faster in a computer, apparently, which I wouldn't
Yes.
know by practical experience. But so I have sympathy for what they're driven by, but it still is a bummer that they should realize there is sort of a missing thing. Like every time I see an artist do a background where it's clearly been constructed in CG and then it's a framework of buildings and whatever that's clearly not inked by hand. It's just how you got it output, and then you use it, and you delicately draw your fingers figures interweaving with those backgrounds. To me, it loses a certain amount of investment that even I make as a reader. Like, I don't feel like I'm in the work when all of it is digital layers. You know, often when I see digital inking, I can tell the difference to inking on paper. Doesn't mean I don't like this stuff. I like it plenty. I like digital coloring. I like all different parts of the buffalo here of the way the job's been split up. But let me give an example of something that I also want to advertise a show, not just the one at the Dunn Museum in Libertyville, which is going to be going on until February for anybody listening.
Yeah, plenty of time, everybody, to see this wonderful exhibit. You're absolutely right, and I'm glad you said that, Alex. Thank you.
And there's this other show going on in the Museum of Science and Industry, which I refuse to call the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry. It's a show about Spider-Man. That's a traveling show that is there now for I don't know how many months. And it is fantastic. It's much like the Marvel show they had a few years ago. And it's got movie props and giant figurines of Spider-Man and various Spider characters. And it's a phenomenal show. I just saw this Sunday and thoroughly enjoyed. Your kids would love it. Everybody will get a joy out of this. And it's a great showcase for the artist's work who did this development. It's a great, if you're a Ramita fan, you're going to feel very charged up with how well he's presented here on a level that truly honors him. But they have some wonderful originals that are featured within the show. So you've got pages of things that are from the original Ditko stuff. And hell, they even have a page that the characters of Aunt May and Uncle Ben were drawn into an early story pre-Spider-Man by Ditko.
Wow.
Which I knew about, but I'd never seen it in person. And they have the original artwork there. So you can get up close to these pieces of art and study them in a way you never would bother to. Well, I mean, why would you with a digital image? When you're seeing it in print, you're seeing the digital image. You could buy the books on your tablet and look at them that way. You wouldn't be doing that with a digitally created piece. But with physical artwork that can be shared in this fashion, there's an interactivity. For one thing, the way the comic art used to be made with the layering of, you know, patches of logos on covers and sometimes paste up of lettering or whiteout on pages, or just to see how the ink work was done delicately in a way that didn't necessarily get picked up properly in the printing process. Those things are fantastic to see in person, and you can get up real close. I was doing that with every single piece that was on display in the show. And of course, they have later stuff like McFarlane and other creators' work, but they borrowed key pieces from Mike Berkey and many other collectors to feature in this exhibit. So I recommend it to anybody. It's a great time. And as comic art fans go, where else are you going to get a chance to see moments of history presented like this? So go to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago to see the Spider-Man exhibit, which has a specific name I cannot immediately call up for you, but you know, something with a name.
Yeah, that's cool, man. No, I think they'll be able to find it. Hey, where's the Spider-Man stuff? We don't know what you're talking about. No, I hear you, man. Do you get the artist editions of the oversized stuff that the companies have put out, the reproductions of the artist editions and things?
I do have a ton of them. I don't remember when I kind of burned out on them a bit, but recently they delivered a Neil Adams one that I had to wake up to the fact of, oh, wait a minute, I don't actually have one of these about Neil Adams. They hadn't done one yet. And this one is chock full of important pieces of Batman and Superman history. And it's a great travelogue of the best of Neil and the impact that he made in comics. So I really recommend IDW's current Batman treasury. In fact, I currently have it in my office because it only came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's outstanding.
That's great. Any good anecdotes of dealing with Neil? Because I know Neil could be tough on people, and I wonder how tough he might have been on a young Alex Ross. And even as the years progressed, how your relationship. He was always great to me.
Well,
And
I
I
wouldn't
was so
claim I had a relationship with Neil. I just met him in a few occasions, and he was nothing but kind and supportive. So I don't have anything like that. I have the oddity of the Neil that was maybe looking towards ambitions that didn't exactly pay off, and from his own doing. There was a book he talked about making all during the 90s that was about his view of the history of the Earth and how all of
yes.
the planets are growing in size. So he had a video for that was at his booth and whatnot. So I knew about this from everybody else telling me. And then I thought at the one show I overlapped with him, meaning that he was a guest and I was a guest. It was in Florida. It was MegaCon in 1999.
Okay.
I decided when I had an hour break during my times between signings that, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go up to him and I'm gonna introduce myself because I should meet him. He's obviously a hero, and in many ways, the way in which I would understand how much of a hero was more than just what he was in childhood. It's a long legacy of your whole life. You're interacting with this work and going back to seeing like, oh, I remember, boy, yeah, I love this image, and you realize how much it's in your DNA that you keep referring back to things in your own brain. And my entire layout sense, I would say, oh, it comes from Adams. The way I might see figures in my head, the way I would do forced perspective. It's all Neil. There's certain things when I draw Batman the way I do, I'm almost trying to rebel against the instinct to just draw what Neil's Batman looked like, And part of me thinking after all the stuff I've done, it's like, I want to return to drawing it like Neil. That'd be more fun, Anyway, so I do that. I meet Neil, and I basically go in from a conversation where he's very complimentary, very nice, and almost in the way that needs to reflect upon the first thing I mentioned, he suddenly goes into a sales pitch about his current book project about the beginning of the Earth and the dinosaurs and all the stuff he was working on pages for that, as far as I know, have still never been printed.
I was wondering. Okay.
And as I do know, he solicited that book and never delivered it way back then. Now, if something happened that I somehow missed, I don't know that he ever made that project finally happen. He talked about it relentlessly to people. And then he took this first meeting with me, who I've got nothing to do with any of that. And he starts going off on a jag talking about it. And it lasts for like another half an hour. And I'm standing there as a speechless, kind of polite observer, wondering, what does this got to do with me? I mean, you could be telling this to everybody who's coming to see you, but why me? And he's, he basically kept going long enough that I had to think, the time for my next signing's coming up here. I'm going to be late. I have to break into his soliloquy about his book to basically say, or it wasn't so much about his book. He's talking about his theories.
Sure. Yes.
He's not talking about his artwork. He's talking about what his vision of the history of the universe.
Yeah.
And how he can argue about this with any scientist and tell them what they don't understand. It's yeah. It's sort of like that guy who I'm forgetting the actor's name, who had the new math idea. It was very much in that sort of league. Who's the guy that played War Machine before?
Terrence. Terrence, and I can't think of his name. He was on that show, Empire.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I love that guy.
It's a lot like him talking about his new math.
I didn't. Oh, I have heard about that theory. Yes. Or let's put it in comic book terms. I know Otto Binder was a big believer in white noise. That if you listen carefully, you can hear the ghosts. The ghosts are there.
I read
Mark
that.
Evanier. Yeah, I know Mark Evanier just sat and listened to white noise. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? And when I had my first conversation with Neil, I absolutely let him tell his. We had much like us had a multi-hour conversation, and I'm like, Neil, you've been incredible. Tell me about your expanding Earth theory. You've been kind with your time, and thankfully, this is when podcasting was in its infancy, literally 2005, that we had this talk. And that was great. And I'm glad I got him then because, he gave me all the stories about Superman, Ali, and Batman and everything else. You know what was awesome? He was very deferential and respectful about Jim Aparo. Because when I was talking about the other artists that kind of modeled their Batman after 70s and 60s Batman, I said, in Jim Aparo, he's like, no, no, no. Jim Aparo did his version of Batman. And I know Jim was older than Neil and everything, but it was a rare, to me, magnanimous move on Neil's part to say, no, 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 he came before me, and I have, respect for what Jim brought to Batman and everything.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, and also you could see if you buy back issues of Jim Aparo's Phantom, he already drew like Jim Aparo without the effect of Neil Adams changing comics for so many artists that followed. So,
Sure.
and as far as I remember that story, Jim basically reached out to Neil to say, hey, you've already started this look. Can I basically reflect the same thing? And so he was polite enough to Neil to say that to him. At least that's what I remember Neil saying at some point. And I don't know that any other creators had to do that because it was across the line. I mean, Irv Novick was doing it dovetailing with the issues that Neil was drawing otherwise, and they needed it to look the same. So Irv Novick had been on the book well before Neil, and he adapted to this change. And, so nothing that Jim was doing seemed out of sorts with keeping it all alive. But you realize that, years later, when you're getting, say, the style guide for DC being done by Garcia Lopez, it's like, well, you have Neil to thank for that and so many of the other things that the way these characters look in the modern era, were reformatted by Neil's handling of them. He sexed them up in a way. He made everything a little bit sleeker and a lot more competitive with what Marvel had changed. So it's interesting, but
I know, and literally coming off the ashes of the Adam West Batman and the hangover that we were getting in the comics before Neil and Denny got that chance to kind of really, no, 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 let's get back to the Dark Knight and that mystical Batman and everything. Thank God it came when it did, and certainly we were little kids and the benefactors of that realization and everything, and that's why Batman endures. Absolutely, man. Alex, we've come over 2 hours, and I don't want to overstay my welcome. And I will ask you though, in closing, as you suggested, you are making a new graphic novel with Marvel characters. I don't know if Abrams is going to put it out again or if Marvel. Okay, so it's through Abrams. How close are we?
Technically, this is not the first word of it out in the universe, even though it is. We're going to say, for the sake of all the people working in their publicity department, to say, like, he told the world he's doing something for us. That's our job. But you're going to forget by the time we need to get everybody ordering this thing next year. So, so I'm doing a thing. It's the longest form project I've done to date. And it's the most involved in terms of the amount of characters I'm working with.
I'm so glad you truly, Neil. Sorry, we were talking about Neil. I'm so glad, Alex, that you're back doing interiors. I mean, we've talked in the past when you did the Kingdom Come homage in Justice Society. That was so great to see you do it. And listen, man, I can only imagine, and truly only imagine, how long it takes for your kind of art to happen. And really give us the final product that we get. It's always worth the wait. So that's fine. I hope, and forgive me on the record, and if this isn't okay, then I'll edit it. But I hope you and I will find an excuse to talk before then and before the marketing of that. Because
please.
Alex, truly, at your meet and greet for the Dunn Museum, which I'll remind everybody, Heroes and Villains, happening at the Dunn Museum till next February. So plenty of time if you're planning to travel to the Chicago area. It is so worth it to go those extra couple miles to Libertyville and go to the Dunn Museum and see Heroes and Villains. It is so worth your time. But nothing made me happier than truly, I was just ready to say hello to you. And you're like, hey, man, when are we going to do a new talk? And I'm like, great, excellent. Because, so in a few months, because really, I would love to talk to you further about Earth X and Justice and some of the other things. And we can just
want to talk about, by the way, a funny
talk
thing.
To me.
We went to the bookstore right after seeing the Superman movie, and on the shelf was a new trade of Earth X I hadn't seen yet that had a recycled cover of one of the particular old comic issues. And it was funny because they clearly wanted to be tying into the Fantastic Four movie So it was the, I don't know, 11th cover for the series that has the two Silver Surfer figures. So Shala Bal is a surfer along with Norrin Rad. And that's both on the spine of the book as well as the cover. And I thought, oh my God. And plus, Kruger and I are already, we were invited to the premiere of the FF movie. He's going because he's in LA. And, we are acknowledged as contributors to this movie, apparently. So it's a bizarre thing. And Jim has theories about that it could even go further than that, but I won't bother to blow out what those are here. They involve Galactus.
Excellent.
But yeah, I mean, we know back when the Eternals movie got made, which we were invited to that premiere too, and our names are in that. I was able to tell him from watching the trailers for it, I guessed at what was going to happen, what they were going to take from our Earth X book. And he thought it wasn't the case, and I was right, and I won that bet. So in this case, yeah, I guess we're partially to blame for the gender swap on Silver Surfer, which there we go.
No, honestly, well, Alex, I'll ask. Given that, maybe we could talk next month or September about the Fantastic Four movie.
If you would like to, sure. I mean,
that'd be great, man.
I'd be terrified to, because let's say I'm very negative on the subject and everybody else is positive, or maybe it'll be the opposite. I could say I love it and all the fans hate it. Who knows? I mean, I just know there's no value in really going out into the public sphere and saying a lot of negative stuff, because ultimately it just gets a sour feeling from fans. Like, they don't like to think that the creators of this stuff have such salty opinions on these things. And of course, I'm just a fan like everybody else.
Well, first of all, Alex, I agree with you, and shame on me, I had forgotten it. I'm going to have to go through my Marvel Unlimited and reread Earth X and the things, because I had forgotten that you guys had made Shala Bal another surfer. And the only thing, initially I was angry and like, that's unnecessary. And then I'm like, well, it is an alternate universe. So kind of like a good what if story. What if Galactus picked Shala Bal instead of Norrin Rad? Okay, I guess. And whatever. But also, and man, I've been very vocal about this. Shame on Dean Cain giving the shadow that he did to the new Superman movie. That's, years ago I got the chance to talk to Jim.
I don't know anything about this. Sorry.
Oh yeah, don't bother. But years ago I interviewed J. Michael Straczynski, and I talked about the later Twilight Zone things. And I'm like, and he worked on the 80s syndicated and CBS Twilight Zone from the 80s. And at the time, the UPN Twilight Zone had already happened. This is years before Jordan Peele's more recent Twilight Zone. But I'm like, hey, what do you think? He goes, hey, man, we're all part of the Twilight Zone family. The last thing I would ever do is say anything negative about people who came after us. He goes, I mean, my God, I'm standing in the shadow of Charles Beaumont and Richard Matheson and Rod Serling, whatever. And again, the opportunity that Dean Cain had, and I thought he was a great Superman in Lois and Clark. And for him to cast shade on this new one, it's like, dude, not cool. Shame on you. And that's what I've always appreciated about the Bonds over the years and everything. And it's like, come on, man. You're all part of the same team. Be cool, Well,
it is weird. Like, when you're involved creatively directly with this material, and then you have opinions, which luckily I can vent them to friends, whatever those opinions may be. That it leaves a very sour taste. I know by reading things. I mean, we were talking about Neil here moments ago. Neil would tell stories out of school from all the past things that got his blood boiling about stuff. And I realized, reading a whole book of that, there's one coffee table book on Neil that he did all the text for, and it was very souring, the feeling of it. And I realized I'd better not do any of that. My instinct is to complain. But don't go out there and tell everybody how the thing they like is dumb, or how everybody that was doing these jobs were bad people. I mean, even if I can say, I can prove to you how this person that's been working in the business all these years is a terrible human being, and here's my graph to prove to you how that's the case. people don't want to hear it from me. They could hear it from you. No offense, but this is your job to give commentary or to engage in this sphere.
Yes.
For me, I gotta keep my sourness to myself and my family. They have to live with me.
No, but I get it. And absolutely, man. And that's great. And I'm glad you feel that way. And yeah, man, especially like the little kid that saw Man of Steel and had a blast. God bless you, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to, shit on your parade. Give me a break, for God's sake. So yeah, and truly, I always feel like, Alex, I'm walking a tightrope because there's enough negativity out there. And again, I'm glad that you stay out of it as far as the internet sphere. You're not missing anything.
Well, there's also a difference between communicating with somebody like this, where if you're hearing my words and especially even seeing me tell them, you can kind of feel like, hey, you know what? This guy might have this thing I don't agree with, but you can also realize it's just a person saying something that I could also change my opinion tomorrow. I could also have a change of heart later and not necessarily make it so firm as the written word can feel potent and overly negative in a way. And I have to mind the fact that, well, I'm still selling myself and my work to people. I need to realize I'm a commodity in a sense that can't be so garnished by heavy negativity. But if you're watching engagement with me as a person, you realize, like, really, that's the guy who draws that stuff? Well, he's just some guy. And yeah, that's it. I'm just some guy at the end of the day.
Well,
Another bald guy, another bald middle-aged guy who makes comic books. So
yeah, but first and foremost, we're all fans, and I understand that. But again, we don't want to, God, I handled a panel at Terrificon a couple of years ago about Robin, and it had current writers of Robin and all versions of Robin, from Dick Grayson to Damian Robin, and Mike Barr and Denny O'Neil were like, I never cared for. Well, first of all, Denny's like, what the hell, man? You got this brightly colored sidekick that I'm sure is a much more easy target than the guy in the shadows is and stuff. And they're all just dumping on Robin. And there was some little 5-year-old kid, and I kept looking at in the audience, and all I could think of is that inside his inner monologue was, "But I like Robin," and it's like, yeah, man, But it was hilarious for the panel, and certainly us older fans. But it's like, yeah, man, I love Denny. I had so many wonderful hours of conversation with. What a great guy. I treasure that. But yeah, and truly, Alex, it means so much that you come back. I thank you so much for this. Wonderful conversation, and truly areas that I wasn't expecting to go into, and that is the key and hallmark of a great guest. You're always a great guest. So truly, if we can, maybe we can arrange something in August.
I'm totally open to it.
That'd be so great, Alex. That means a lot, man. So,
yeah.
All right. So until then, I will stop the interview and say again, thank you very much for the conversation today.
Thank you for having me.